Good morning, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Jeannie White is the producer. I have a very special guest with me today, Gary Joseph LeBlanc. Hi, Gary.
Hey, Betsy. How you doing? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming back, and thank you for your time. Could you please tell the listeners about your very impressive...
Yeah, you with me, Bets?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. All right, there was a little cut off there, a minute on it. Yeah, I'm Gary Joseph LeBlanc. I'm Director of Education for the Dementia Spotlight Foundation. I'm a columnist. I wrote a column for the past 12 years called Common Sense Caregiving. I used to write for the Tampa Tribune and many other national papers. I've written 4 books on dementia care. But mostly all my education really all came out of family. I took care of my dad for 12 years. He died of Alzheimer's. Right after my dad died, it was 8 years with mom with vascular dementia, and I have another family member, I won't mention the name, but is then currently now been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. So we're on our 3rd run, basically, on this. So
that's a lot. That's a lot for one person to deal with. And you also teach the Sheriff's Department in Florida?
Yeah, I've been doing
dementia.
Sheriff's Department. Yeah, I do a class called Dementia Awareness for the Sheriff's Departments down in Florida here. Been doing that for the past 5 years. It's really one of the best classes I teach as far as I just love these guys on it. They ask the best questions of anybody on it. I mean, we had to put another 20, 30 minutes aside just for the questions coming out of these guys and women. So they see this stuff every day, so it's very important we get this stuff straight for them and they get a better understanding of what's happening, all the different diseases, what the different symptoms, and what's happening in the home front. I want them, when they get a 911 call and they knock on that door, I want them to make sure they understand what's happening in the home, and how to deal with the person with dementia at the same time. So it's been very successful. A great class.
That's very important because when they get a call, the police, and someone with dementia is hallucinating or aggressive, you don't want them to mistake that for being combative or being uncooperative. That was always a fear of mine, you know.
Unfortunately, here in Florida, we have what we call a Baker Act system. It's basically 5150 in most states. It's called different things in per state. But it's a 72-hour mandatory psych evaluation. And this is what we're trying to prevent. I can't tell how many people with dementia are getting Baker Acted, and only over a UTI. Urine tract infection. They don't need to be in behavioral health for a UTI. They need to be on the right antibiotics. Because of the urine tract infection, they start hallucinating, and their behavior gets combative, all this stuff. And next thing you know, they're stuck in behavioral health. And this is one of the things by teaching this class. We're training the officers what to be looking for and what to suspect. So a lot of good happening.
That's excellent. And do you also teach, or do they have a safe, well, we call it in my area, Safe and Sound program, where they are put into the computer base and their picture would come up if they're lost, so that the police department would know how to handle an individual when they find them?
Yeah,
do you teach about that?
Here. So some counties do have a program similar to that. Some of them have the safe return. I mean, every county is a little bit different. That's not a statewide run on it, but I will say most of these counties are really getting on board, and they get some pretty good systems down. A big part of the class we're teaching is on wandering and rescuing. And unfortunately, hopefully not recovery, but hopefully it's more of a rescue aspect of it. But this stuff happens quick. We lose them fast sometimes.
Yes, and Gary, I'm sure you would agree with me that if there is a program like that in a person's area, that they should definitely register them with their local police department or sheriff's department.
Absolutely. On current photographs, always, even if you go to the mall with this person or something like that, you should be taking a photograph when you walk out of the door of what clothes they're wearing and everything on it. Because if you do lose them when you're out in public, then you'll have some current information on it. And I know as a caregiver, you're looking at the same person over and over, but you do see changes with these diseases. And, when my father was down to the end, in the late stages of him, people coming over and go, I don't even recognize your dad. And to me, he hadn't changed that much because I was with him every day. But when an outsider comes in, so it's important we have current photographs and all that.
Absolutely important. I had a scare, this had to be about 5-6 years ago. Matt was able to walk alone at the time, and he became lost. And he was registered, so the police found him within 30 minutes. But that was a very worrisome 30 minutes. They were very good. And my husband had a sense of humor, Gary. So when he came home, he said, they didn't buckle me in, and that seat was not comfortable.
Just one thing that's kind of worrisome. I teach a lot of classes in the public. I mean, doing all the caregivers seminars and all this stuff. And I'll always ask them, I go, and one woman, she goes, well, we just lost my dad, and we were lucky enough that we got him back when I was talking about wandering. So I asked this woman, I go, how long did it take you to call 911? And her answer was 3 hours.
Oh, my goodness.
Some caregivers are so worried about getting in trouble with the other family members that they're going to start doing the searching by themselves. She literally waited 3 hours before she came home and called the 911 on it, and by that time the guy couldn't. She was very lucky to get the man back, and I'm very happy she did. But that's something we have to encourage all caregivers. You just have to call the number right away, 911 right away.
Absolutely. Yes, at times of the essence. I used to tell my son Josh, if your dad ever gets lost, because I was at work, you call me, and I will call the police department. And my son has special needs, so what did he do? He went looking for his father. Right. And I said, Josh, you should have called me. So then I called the police department. I was at work, and I left. But very important, time is of the essence, for sure, because you don't know how far that person can walk.
It is a natural instinct to go looking for him yourself, but we got to fight that off. Just call the number and just get the police on this right away. So.
Very important. Gary, can you tell us about your Purple Angel wristband program that you developed?
Sure. I've been working on this a little over 10 years on it. This is basically, it's not so much a wristband, but it's a Purple Angel logo. It's a sticker that we put on the main admission wristband in the hospital. So when your loved one goes in the hospital with any signs of dementia, whether it's Alzheimer's, Lewy bodies, doesn't matter, traumatic brain injury, post-surgery delirium, it doesn't matter. We're putting this Purple Angel on your wristband. No wording, it's just a logo on it, and that's just stating that this patient is at risk for cognitive impairment. It's not a diagnosis. It doesn't say this person has Alzheimer's. It's only an at-risk symbol. And this is how we get by the HIPAA laws and all this. A lot of people thought it was a HIPAA law concern. But this was in the legal departments of many hospitals for months before they approved all this. It's not a HIPAA violation. It's basically an alert system. And the same as the yellow band of risk at fall. Doesn't mean they're going to fall, but it's just saying they're at risk. So because we know that when you bring a person with dementia to the hospital setting, you need to be there 24/7. Or you need to have somebody there 24/7, because how are they going to get the correct information out of these people? I can tell you story after story on it. And basically, I took my dad. I went through 3 hospital stays. This is why I started this. I went to my mother through 3 hospital stays, and every single one was a nightmare. And I mean, I know in hospitals it's an acute care, but that doesn't work with somebody with dementia on it. So there's not only just an alert system on it. We're asking the hospital to provide a companion. If the family cannot be there, we're asking them to have them put a companion in that room. You get 2 people with dementia, put one in one bed, or the other bed, put the companion in the middle, so they can keep an eye on these people. They can help feed them. They can read to them. They can do whatever. But at least there'd be somebody there to let them know when they're getting out of bed. And half the times they don't even understand what building they're in at this point. They're not in the hospital for Alzheimer's. They're in the hospital on something else came on top of that disease, an infection, a virus, or whatever it is, that brought them to that setting. So, of course, you're going to see them at the worst of their worst.
Absolutely.
So it's been very sexy. I had a phone call yesterday in South New Jersey about this program yesterday on it. We get into 17 hospitals now. We've been working on this. The bigger the hospital, the harder it is because the more corporate, but we're getting there. It's for a long time it was a struggle, but now it seems to be moving faster and faster. So.
Excellent. Gary, I have to tell you, last May, I recommended you, and I gave the information to my local hospital administrator because I had a nightmare with Matt in the emergency room. I mean, how do you expect a person with dementia to wait 2 to 3 hours in the waiting area and not be agitated when they are agitated and not approach them appropriately because it's a fast-paced environment. Do you teach hospitals dementia education for the staff on how to approach a dementia patient?
That's all part of the program. We won't even release the trademark symbol for it until there's training in the hospital. It's no sense of putting anything on it's only a piece of plastic if you don't bring the education in. So the training, the education is the biggest part of this on it. So,
well,
basically what I'm doing now is I'll go in and I'll train the trainers, and the hospital will take over the training and deal with it. To go in to train a hospital staff, and I've done several hospitals on it, it could take 15 to 20 days because you can only pull so many people off the floor at once. You know, we're talking 15, 20 days of doing 2 classes a day. It's a big project on it. This way they can bring the training in at orientation. They have the program in place on it. We've discovered it's a lot easier to let the hospital do the training, but we just got to train the trainers so they know exactly what education to bring in. And we've got to educate them. The Lewy bodies worries me the most of them all. They end up in an emergency room. Lewy body is so medication sensitive. Half these doctors in the emergency room doesn't even know what Lewy bodies is. Now you got a patient sitting in front of them. They're giving them all the wrong meds, and everything is just going downhill on this person. It's a big project, man, but we're getting there on it. And
that is excellent.
When the hospital call me after a lawsuit, that's usually when the hospital's reaching out to me.
Yes, I have had to call the hospital administrator a couple of times, and I just recently recommended you again. I get the attitude, and I don't know if you find this, we have our own protocol, our own, hospital system education, but apparently it's not working. So
this is the aspect I get from them. You can't put in their mind that they're doing something wrong because in their minds they're not. So we got to go around at a different route with them and say, hey, we can make this better on it. And we're not trying to change every hospital protocols. Every hospital has their own protocols. We're just trying to add to it to improve certain things on it for the people living there with dementia on it. And they know they're getting family complaints left and right. You know, I mean, the situations that they have on it, people are wandering right out of these buildings. Next thing you know, they're walking down the side of the road. They have it in their gowns. I mean, there's a lot of situations in this thing that they do understand on it. But, again, a hospital, the bigger the company, the more corporate. You're talking to one CEO, he has about 100 people still above him. So it's a tough situation. You got to just keep working and working with these people on it. But,
well, I want to thank you.
Finally, they're going to get about 10 Betsy's, and they're going to say, okay, maybe we really do have a problem here. So if the families aren't jumping on this and complaining, it's never going to get anywhere, and it's not going to get any better. So it's people like you that are going to actually help the situation on this.
Thank you, Gary. Would you recommend, Gary, because I tell people this all the time on my show, you have to be an advocate for your loved one. This is how change happens. You can't turn a blind eye towards mistreatment. And would you recommend a loved one speaking up on behalf of, the caregiver speaking up on their loved one, talking to the hospital administrator and saying, education is needed here among your staff?
Like I say, it has to be done the right way so you're not criticizing the hospital because they're just closing they're not hearing one word of that. It goes out through one ear and out the other. It says, how can we make this better? We got to turn it around a little bit. And sometimes it's very difficult because we're pissed. You got your loved one laying in the bed. Nobody knows how to handle this person. Everything is going wrong on it, and they're not even seeing it. I mean, so sometimes I'll tell you, one of my doctors, my hospital visits with my dad, they were clapping their hands when we were discharged and leaving. They weren't happy my dad was leaving. They were happy I was leaving because they had enough of it. But I mean, this is the attitude you get on it, and it takes something. And I hate to say this, but I've known 10 fatalities in hospital settings, all because they let the person with cognitive impairment speaking up for themselves and giving them miscommunication on it. I brought my dad in the emergency room. He had 104 fever one time. Right? He's sick. I go, he adamantly wanted out of the house at 1:30 in the morning. Nothing on but his boxers on. I go, Dad, you can't go out of the door dressed like that. You can't go out at 1:30 in the morning. I reached over and put my hand on his shoulder. And I'm like, oh, my goodness, the man was on fire. 104 fever. I get him dressed. I get him down in the emergency room. I'm trying to explain to the emergency room doctor, I go, listen, my dad's in the latter stages of Alzheimer's. He had 104 fever at the house, and he just asked me why all the green smoke is pouring out of your ceiling. The man was a mess. The doctor was like, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to check this acidity. So they go to my dad. They go, sir, do you know how old you are? My dad's not saying anything. He goes, do you know where you were born? Absolutely nothing coming out of my dad. Do you know who the president is? Nothing. The doctor walks us out, closes the curtain in the emergency room. My dad looks at me and he goes, this guy thinks he's a doctor. He doesn't even know who the president is. I'm like, yeah. Right? The point was, he didn't even understand why they were asking these questions. So I can almost believe it. When they ask you, where were you born, the guy goes, Houston. Never been to Houston in their life. I can almost live with that. But when they start asking questions like, I don't know, are you allergic to any medications? Have you ever had surgery? How many kidneys do you have? And they're writing down anything this person says, we have a problem. Because maybe 5 to 10% of the time that information is correct. Most cases, it's completely wrong information. They're writing down everything this person says, and now we got a whole situation that's going to go bad very quickly in that building. So again, when you bring your loved one to the hospital, you cannot let them go into triage by themselves. And they're going to try to keep the caregiver out in the lobby to fill out all the paperwork and all that stuff. You got to be adamant. You need to have, if you're a power of attorney or a healthcare surrogate, you need to have those documents with you at that emergency room. And that's why I tell everybody, those power of attorney, those healthcare documents, they need to be downloaded to your phone. Put it on your smartphone. We're more worried about leaving the house without our phone today than anything else, right? That way you'll always have the documents with you on the stealing it. You show them your phone like it's a badge. It goes, I'm power of attorney. Go, that person's not going in there without me. No questions are going to be asked unless I'm present. And you show them that power of attorney paper on your phone all the whole time they're in the hospital. To everybody. I don't care if it's even the maintenance person. You show those documents to that person. That's honestly the only way they get it.
Excellent. That is excellent advice. I'm glad you said that, Gary, because I say this all the time. You have to have those papers with you or on your phone. That's a good idea. I never even thought about that, putting it on my phone.
10 years ago, I used to tell everybody to keep your documents in your glove box of your car. You never know when an emergency is going to happen. Today, you can still keep it in your glove box, but your phone, you're going to have to, okay, are you a power of attorney? I go, yes, I'll email this to you right now. What's your email address? And you just send your document. If you don't know how to put them on your phone, ask an 8-year-old. They'll put them on your phone faster than I will, right? Just take a photograph of the documents if that's the case, so you have it at least in your photos. I mean, this is something we need to have with us at all times.
Very good idea. I never thought about carrying it with me all the time, to be honest with you. I had it, in a safe place where I knew I, needed it, but that's a great idea. Thank you, Gary. I would love to.
Happen and they happen quick, so you just don't know when you're going to need it.
Yeah, and, you don't know. I mean, you're outside. Injury could happen, and that way you have the papers. My mother-in-law was on her way to the daycare one time, and she fell outside. She had Alzheimer's and cracked her head, and they're asking her, Mrs. Sloan, do you want to go to the hospital? And I said, she has Alzheimer's. She can't tell you yes or no. And so she went, and I had to call my husband because he had the power of attorney to come to the hospital to meet her there. But excellent advice. Could you please talk about your book, The After Effects of Caregiving? I heard you speak a little bit on that last week for the Center for Caregiver Support Seminar, and I was yelling here in New Jersey, yes, Gary. The information is phenomenal.
That was actually a Dementia Spotlight Seminar. I'm glad you attended on that. This was a tough subject. I wrote this book. I tried writing it a couple of years after my dad died. And I started, I had to put it on the shelf and put it away. And actually I put it away for a couple of years because I realized I'm writing this thing and I'm still stuck in the damn middle of it. I mean, so I had to really get through a certain phase. I got mom coming on, caregiving for her, doing it. So I started writing it. I had basically the book laid out, and I knew what I wanted to do with it. But it just, everything changed on it. But the book, basically, we all go through after effects on this. People don't realize this on it. We're just, and it could be emotional, it could be depression, it could be financial. I mean, there's so much. So the goal of my writing this book was for caregivers to read it now while they're still caregiving. Because I wanted to realize what could possibly be happening next. And it might not be everybody going through this, but I'm going to tell you, it's probably 90% of people that are going to experience some after effects, if not 100% on it. But there's certain things that we're stuck in right now as caregiving today that are going to linger on. And then we're trying to grieve at the same time afterwards. We're not realizing everything's getting jumbled up. So if you're caring for somebody, go on Amazon, grab the book. It's The After Effects of Caregiving. It's a good read. It's an important read that people realize. And don't wait till you already lost your loved one. Read it today. That was the whole purpose of me writing this on it. So
I wish I did read that book before Matt left me, because you definitely do have the after effects of caregiving that sometimes you don't even expect to have. I was really surprised that I myself, who preach don't feel guilty, had guilty feelings.
Sometimes you're double whammied on the guilt. I mean, you don't expect it coming. There's so many little things on it. So the book talks about that, and it talks about ways to how to get yourself out of it. I mean, we have to get back on it. I mean, grieving, that golden question, how long should I grieve? There's no length of time. There's no golden rule on that. But we don't have to grieve on our couch. Sometimes we have to get some clothes on. We have to get outside, get in the sun, and just get ourselves up and getting back into a social world again. Because the longer we stay in our homes, wrapped up in a cocoon, with blankets, the worse it's going to become. So it's hopefully the book motivates people to get up and going again after caregiving on it, and take everything you learned during that caregiving campaign and share it. Us caregivers have this unique knowledge that's really not out there for the normal person on it. So we should be sharing our knowledge with everybody we can.
Thank you for saying that, Gary. Absolutely. I say I'm not an expert. I can only talk about my own experience. But if my experiences could help someone else from not doing what I did, preventing a mistake, I'm all for telling my experience. And I think if more caregivers spoke up, it would be better for them, and they're helping someone else, which also would help with their grieving.
Right.
I know it's helped.
You
helped
actually have
me.
this radio show, right? You're there to help others,
yes.
Man. You're sharing information on it. So you never know where you just campaign. When you're in the middle of the caregiving aspect of it, and you're in that campaign on it, everything might be pretty glim for a little while there and all that, but you don't realize you're actually evolving, and nobody sees this at that point. But you're changing, your personality changing, all this stuff changing on you. You don't even realize it. And some of us come out of this pretty hard. You cannot get this into clinical depression when we're done. But if you come out of this right, you're going to be a much better person. And I believe that.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no university on this planet that teaches us this stuff, to be honest. You go to the doctor's office, they can talk to us about the disease and all that, but they truly don't really understand what's happening in the home.
Yes, I agree.
I think every doctor should go and sit in one dementia caregiving support group at least once in their career. And if they sat there for an hour with a group of caregivers in a support group, that doctor would walk out of there with a whole new understanding of what they've been missing for years on it.
Absolutely. And you know what, Gary, it's people like you, and I admire what you're doing and what you have done, what you are doing, because you turned a tragedy into helping people, and it's helping thousands and thousands of people. And your Dementia Spotlight Foundation is helping so many people. Can you talk about the Dementia Spotlight Foundation? What it does? What you do?
I love working with these folks on it. Whitney Altman started it. Her dad died of Alzheimer's on it. Another guy we got with us is Vince Angaro. His dad died of Alzheimer's. So everybody that's working with the foundation, it's only a small handful of us on it, one handful of us basically on it, that have all been into the caregiving front of this on it. So we understand from the caregiving front and what we're doing on this. Our two biggest goals with the foundation is to provide free education and free respite care. Right now we're covering so many counties in Florida and Georgia on it, where my goal is to cover respite care throughout the whole state of Georgia and the whole state of Florida. That's going to take some more funding, without a doubt, on it. But that's my goal, is to get it on. Every year we try to add a couple more counties, and we're building in bigger areas of respite care. But we provide respite care for caregivers that are in need. On it, it's short-term respite care, but if somebody would have said, hey, Gary, I'm going to give you an afternoon off, go away. I wouldn't know what to do with myself on a deal. But people don't realize if you don't take that break, you're going to fall apart. So we're trying to get there to help these families out, we might give them, here's 3-4 hour shifts of respite care for free. And we pay for this. It's 100%. They never have to pull their wallet out of their pocket. This is 100% paid on it. We'll send home care out there. We might send them to daycare. Every situation is different, so we have different aspects that we use for the respite care. But the respite care, I'm so proud of the program. You talk to these people on the phone, man, and just that conversation with them. You mean you're sending somebody out to me for free? I was like, absolutely. What day of the week would you like? And we arranged a home care agency that we have certain agencies that we work with that we're very confident with that meet our standards. Those are the people that we send to your home on it. Sometimes, it might be 48 hours of memory care. We give you a completely 2 days off. It all depends on it. And we do a lot of bartering. We got a lot of home care agencies, memory care units, that they'll donate us 5-6 free days. And then we use that, and I'll divide that up. So I'll divide that into, you give me 6 days, I'll divide it up 2 days for each family. On it. I had a family the other day on it. Their son was graduating from college. They could not even get to the graduation on it. We gave them 48 hours of memory care for free. They get to go to Orlando, see their son graduate. These are things that may sound little to somebody, but it's huge to these families.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Gary, how do they get?
Please go to DementiaSpotlight.org. You can see everything we're doing on it. You see the respite care program applications and all that. There's a lot of information on that for everybody on the DementiaSpotlight.org page. So,
very good. I appreciate you saying that. How would people get in touch with you, Gary, if they wanted to get in contact with you?
You can contact me through there, or Gary at DementiaSpotlightFoundation.org is my email.
And I would highly suggest, no matter where you are on your journey, contact them, because I wish I knew about the Dementia Spotlight Foundation 10 years ago.
Right.
But I wasn't on the internet.
I started this journey 23 years ago. There was nothing out there then. When I started caring for my dad, there was one support group in the area I live in once a month. You missed that support group, you had to wait a whole other month to get to another group on it. Today, now they're on every corner. Honestly, different times of day. We've come a long ways in certain aspects. And helping the caregivers, the best thing about going to a support group, you're going to find out what's available to you locally. Because you're going to sit in a room with a whole bunch of other caregivers that have either already gone through this or are stuck in the middle of it. This doctor works really well for me. This doctor has not worked really well for me. The valuable information you're going to get out of going to a support group, until you've done it, you're going to be shocked on it. It's just sitting in the room with a bunch of brotherhood, sisterhood, other caregivers is just not that. Maybe I wasn't as crazy as I thought. Their experience, their situation's worse than mine. It's like if you're not attending a support group, I honestly believe you're making a mistake. I'm very strong on it. So, and that's the other thing we're doing at the Dementia Spotlight. We're doing online support groups twice a week. Actually, we got one today at 11 o'clock. So these are online. You don't even have to leave your house for caregivers. It's a great program. So.
Yes, I would highly recommend that to the listeners. I know I post on my page and in my group the Spotlight Foundation webinars. And I would appreciate, Gary, you could email me or just send me a little reminder, and I will post it on my pages because people need it.
I think we got 5 coming up in the next 4 weeks, so we got them lined up pretty good right now. Normally I'm out in public. I was supposed to be in Baltimore last week speaking, and supposed to be in Pennsylvania in a couple of weeks speaking. Everything's been canceled or put on hold because of the virus. So we've gone virtual and everything. We've learned to adapt, like everybody else, and that's why we're doing so many webinars right now, because we're replacing the events that we lost on it, and we're still getting the education out. So, and they're free. Everything's free. So.
That's awesome. I didn't have internet back even 10 years ago. And you're right, because when I started with my mother-in-law 20 years ago, there wasn't any information, not much at all. I had to do my own research. There was more information when Matt was diagnosed 10 years ago, but there wasn't much information on early onset. And doctors didn't even want to say that he had Alzheimer's because of the age. So that made me really mad. So when I did get my smartphone, I went in my car and started to raise awareness on this early onset. And I want to thank you, Gary, for coming on with me today. I'm glad we were able to connect this time. I appreciate your time. And folks, buy Gary's books. You could get them on Amazon. Is there anywhere else they could purchase your
Amazon,
books, Gary?
Most of them are on Amazon and Barnes & Nobles, two best places to get them. So.
And you also wrote a book, if I could remember the name, Drowning in the Sea of Forgetfulness?
Staying Afloat in the Sea of Forgetfulness.
Staying Afloat. Yes.
That
Can you tell me, what is that about? That sounds very interesting.
That's a very personal book on caregiving, basically on Alzheimer's on it. I've written an updated edition to it because things change. So I went back a couple of years after I wrote the first edition of it, and I did an extended edition of it where I added all other information. And that's the thing today. I've been doing this 24 years. You learn every day. You're still learning every day, right? When you're not,
yes,
we're always learning new
very
stuff.
True.
So keep your mind open. Learn from the other caregivers. Learn from everybody you can. Like you said, when I started caring for my dad, Facebook didn't even exist, right? I mean,
right. That's right.
Today? I mean, we're in a different world, man. So.
That's right, and it's the caregivers like you, Gary, who are teaching other caregivers, and it's caregivers who. That's where I learned from. I was being in support groups with other caregivers. I'm online because there wasn't anything I could go to in person in my area. And you're right, if you missed that once a month, there was no other group. And nobody should go through this journey alone. I want to encourage all the listeners, purchase Gary's books, go on the Dementia Spotlight Foundation website and get as much information as you can. You cannot have too much as a caregiver, trust me.
No.
All right, Gary. You're welcome. Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Bye-bye. Folks, this is Chatting with Betsy. I am Betsy Wurzel, the host. Please read the blog that Jeannie White writes. There'll be all this information on there about Gary Joseph LeBlanc, and you can contact him. I suggest contacting the Dementia Spotlight Foundation for information. You can check out my own personal page, Betsy Wurzel, W-U-R-Z-E-L. You could check out my group, hashtag Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement. We accept all dementias. Even if you are not a caregiver, you just want to come and get educated and show support, you can. This is going to be played. If you missed any of this audio cast, I am also on Spotify. Check out Spotify, Chatting with Betsy. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell for this radio station, Passionate Rural Talk Radio. Stay safe, everybody. Stay at home and be blessed. I'll talk to you again later. Bye-bye now.